first for Henry Chang, and then immediately thereafter for Jerry Brown. I started work at an office he created at the city called the Oaklanders Assistance Center, which was an attempt to create a program where there would be ombudsmen helping people navigate through the problems in the city, getting their issues addressed, sort of helping them navigate. We were the major information office of the city. We also did the Mayor's Toy Drive for 17 years. So last year was my last year for that. In November, I started working for the Department of Transportation. And I just wanted to say on the outset that I was a little confused originally by the need for the Department for Transportation. Originally, this was part of Public Works. And I was kind of, just sort of shocked at the need for a new department. And I think probably within the first 2 hours of the first day that I started working there, I understood why it was needed, and it sort of dawned on me. And I've been incredibly excited to work for the department. It's a great new thing in Oakland in so many ways. The atmosphere is cutting edge. The energy is, we often compare it to an internet startup company. It's the same enthusiasm, the same passion. I've been so impressed with the people that I'm working with, their knowledge, their understanding, their insight, and their commitment is just fantastic. So I work predominantly with parking and mobility, which is the office that deals with a number of different programs. Bikeshare, color curbs is something that I deal a lot with, car sharing, demand responsive parking, which we can talk about, digital inventory and data management, EV charging, mobility hubs, municipal code updates, off-street parking, parking enforcement, residential parking permits, ride sharing, smart parking, taxis and TNCs. I do a lot of work with the taxi detail now, transportation demand management, and wayfaring. And I have a handout with all the stuff on it. I'm really happy to answer any questions or talk about anything that's pressing for folks. If I can answer it, I will try to. If I can't, I promise that I will get back to you with an answer, and we can explore that later. Michael Ford, the director of our department, should be here later. He's got another meeting he couldn't get out of, and he's on his way over from that. So if you have any questions, I know people were interested in residential permit parking, which I am helping to coordinate. So I'm free to just fire away.
Could you start off with talking about residential permit parking? I talked to Michael, and he was saying there were going to be some changes this summer in the program.
Well, yeah, there are going to be some changes. I can totally talk about residential parking permitting. Essentially, what that is, if people aren't aware of it, is a way to ensure that long-term parking on the street is really only for the residents who live there. Basically, it's something that the community comes together and sort of decides on through a process that the city helps them navigate. It involves petitioning. Usually there's got to be 6 continuous blocks of 80% or more residential areas, so you can include places that are heavily dependent with businesses. The lines are important because the city's the municipal code specifies that there has to be 51% of the neighbors on each block have to agree for the program. In the first year, I believe, the permits cost $82. In the second year, they're $57. Those costs are likely to rise because there's a feeling that they don't really reflect staff time in terms of administrating and dealing with that issue. This is something I'm warning people about, that it's likely that those permit costs will go up. And I think there's something like 7 different programs like this throughout the city. Berkeley has pretty much, if you look at a map of Berkeley, they've pretty much got the entire city set up like this with various areas. I often compare it to a map of Europe right before World War II with all of the different areas of residential parking. We can discuss their experience with that. Yes?
So, to cut to the chase, from my perspective, I live on Clifton, and it does have residential permit parking. 2 things. One, the City Council has been presented with fees to cover the actual cost of putting signs in, managing it, and the City Council has not liked that scenario, but I think, it always has room for a little bit of increase because you are getting this benefit. But the biggest issue, I think, from my perspective, is that there has been very little, if any, enforcement. And what I understand from Michael, from my interaction and discussion with him at the BART viewing event, finding the alternative location for the Bikeshare, is that the city is looking into getting a reader system where an enforcement vehicle will just drive down the street, and any car that does not have the sticker would get noted through that process and ticketed through that process if they've exceeded the hours.
That is 100% correct.
Okay, and I think that is the big subject probably that a lot of folks in our neighborhood who do not have the permit because they live in an adjacent block, or like in my particular area, people who live on one of the streets next to me don't have permit parking and they can't find a place to park at night, or they're going to be out of town or some other thing, so they bring their cars and park it on a street with my side street, which has no permit parking, and then they leave it there for 3 weeks. And I know that parking, the police department, is 72 hours, but that takes like 6 weeks to get through to. So you know all about that. So when will you be implementing this new system?
Well,
of
as soon as
ticketing?
Michael can get those readers up and running and with approval, he's very enthusiastic about it. I just can speak from my own experience. About a month ago, I went out with a parking enforcement technician in an area near the lake, which has permitted parking, and I watched how they did this. And I've been working a lot with Michael. Today, for example, I worked with 12 applicants for our parking enforcement technician team. These are permanent part-time folks. We are about, according to Michael, 20 to 25% understaffed for parking enforcement. So since November, I have been working to interview, vet, and hire 22 temporary part-time parking enforcement technicians. And this is one of the reasons why the enforcement has been so difficult, because we're just not up to staff. But I watched them drive down the street and hand enter every single license plate that they saw on one side of the street, turn the car around, hand enter every single license plate on the way back. And then when the time came, 2 hours later, we went back and ticketed all of the cars that had not been there. So it's a very laborious process. And this individual, I wish I could share this experience because it was really amazing. This individual was able to rapidly enter this stuff because he's been doing it for quite a while. He's very good at it. And, you know, walking around with him, talking to folks who were getting ticketed and seeing that process, it was really educational. And this is one of the things that we would be able to speed up with enforcement with this kind of equipment. Now, the day that I worked with this guy, he had his career high in the beat of 50 tickets. And we only got to a quarter of the entire space that he had been allocated to work that day. So that's sort of the challenges that we're facing with the enforcement techs. I will say, and I'm kind of proud of this, that C-Click-Fix has been helping us with enforcement issues. I've personally been working on this for the last 2 weeks as a major project to speed up the time from C-Click-Fix reports to dispatching parking enforcement technicians. And there was one area in permitted parking that was not being enforced well. We got 17 people on the first day with the help from C-Click-Fix reports, and 12 the following day. So I've really been working, I've been really...
Maybe you can do a little sting in this neighborhood, because
well,
I don't think they come down our street at all. I mean,
I'm really happy to hear that,
Yeah.
because, like I said, this is the sort of thing that really helps me do my job, because I can get that enforcement out.
You know, I live on one of the streets that's near the BART station, and all of those streets around the BART station got permit parking pretty early because they were being flooded with people leaving their cars there and going into the city. There has not been, at least I have not seen a enforcement officer on my street for 2 years.
Well, I actually...
And what happens is word gets around.
Right.
And people leave their cars there all day long.
I feel you on this, because I actually sent somebody over to Lawton Street who was making this exact same complaint, and in 2 days we only caught one car. And I had somebody there cycling around constantly. But that's really important, and if this area isn't being enforced well, then I need to know that. I mean, that's a really great thing for me to be here to hear that, so I appreciate it.
I mean, that's why I think a lot of people are excited about these automatic license readers, is because maybe we'll get a lot more enforcement.
No, I categorically agree with you, and I've been sending people out to every area where people are telling me this isn't happening. Now, I just want to give everyone a phone number if they want to jot this down. The number for parking enforcement is 238-3099. You call there between 8 and 5. We have somebody at that desk answering the call, and we send people out as fast as we can. I work with the dispatch folks constantly. I'm going to be trained eventually to do the dispatching myself if I need to. Michael and I are both getting training as parking enforcement techs. We will be outfitted with uniforms, and we'll be going out and issuing tickets, as well as Ryan, the director of the Department of Transportation. We're all very committed to that. So I do really appreciate hearing that.
We had a car out here in the meter zone, and it took us 3 weeks to have it towed off of college. So I'm hoping that something's going to be done about that.
Can I just speak to that really quickly about abandoned autos? This is something that I am personally extremely passionate about. When I went out with the person doing the enforcement tech, the time I was telling you about, we found a Mercedes that had been there for 6 months.
Sure.
Okay? Now, I was infuriated by this. I took 4 pictures on my cell phone. I got all the information I could. I went back and I emailed the director of the police department agency that deals with abandoned autos. Fortunately for everyone who lived in that neighborhood, he believed that I still worked for the mayor. So I was able to get that car towed the next day, and the parking enforcement technicians, who are incredibly demoralized by this, were exultant, you know, like, yay, we got that car towed. And subsequently, I was able to get 3 more cars towed, 2 in North Oakland, before they realized I didn't work for the mayor anymore. But wait, jokes aside, the police are 6 weeks out in some neighborhoods or more on towing abandoned cars that they admit to. I met with all the tow staff the other day, and it really depends on the area. But in San Francisco, they're 6 weeks out. In San Leandro, they're 6 weeks out. In San Jose, they're 6 weeks out. I have consistently said that people come from around the world to dump cars in Oakland. And I'm really, really passionate about addressing this, and so is Michael. But right now, it's really in the hands of the police. There's not a lot I can do.
So, if I can make a suggestion,
Sure.
I know that when a car is tagged, it's not cross-checked with OPD to see if it's stolen.
That's not always true.
Okay, but
If we believe the car is stolen, if there's certain signs that make it look like it's stolen, we call it in. When I was out, I called in 2 cars. One was not stolen, one was. We call them a Mary.
So why, when the license plate is put in to issue the ticket, why isn't that computer?
And I will give you the answer to that. Okay, I worked for Gene Kwan's office. Okay, and I don't know if folks remember Richard Cowan, who was one of the people who was her chief of staff for a while. Great guy, very irascible, has very strong personality. I personally love Richard. He was adamant that there should not be any problem with what you're describing. We brought it to the police, and the police said no, and here's why. Information on stolen cars is part of what sworn officers have access to. I am not sworn, neither is Kirby. We work for the city of Oakland, but we are not sworn personnel. That is a different category in the city. You have to be vetted, you have to go through background checks. There's an entirely different kind of employment option. And the information about stolen cars is restricted to sworn personnel only. It's so restricted that even if I were a sworn officer in Los Angeles and I needed to know information that sworn officers knew in Oakland, I could not immediately get it. There's a firewall of information between them. Richard thought this was absurd. He said, I think this is crazy. I totally disapprove of this, but the powers that be have held firm on this. So there's no way for us to immediately have that information. On the other hand, if I feel that a car has been stolen,
Right.
I can call it in.
Because that's same-day towing.
Well, no. That's the cops saying, okay, you think the car is stolen. I'm a sworn officer. I'm going to go and look it up and tell you whether it is or not.
You can call dispatch. If the
Right.
car's stolen,
Right.
I've done this a number of times.
Right.
They will tow that.
They will tow that car if they have the staff to go out and do it. This is another problem because we have a series of cars that we want towed, and they're behind on even doing those. So, I just parenthetically, I would like to have more control over towing cars. This is like a big, big personal goal of mine. I have told everyone that if our department is given, not me personally, but if our department is given authority over abandoned autos, I will buy everybody mini muffins. I've made this commitment because I'm so passionate about abandoned autos, but that's a quick answer to that question.
Just quickly, is that state law
I don't know, sir.
that only sworn officers?
I know that it's consistent throughout every city in California. I don't know of any city that gives immediate access to that. And I mean, I understand some of the rationale for it because it can be abused.
I can understand keeping that information in the police department. What I can't understand is why the information that you guys gather about cars that are, staying there couldn't be transferred over to the police department and ask them to look it up.
It is.
But I mean, why can't that be automated?
Well, here's the problem. Even if it was automated, and it gets given to them really quickly. I mean, our parking staff turn over abandoned cars to the police every day. The question is, how fast can the police get to it? And they have a huge backlog on even the ones that they know they have. So quantifying the situation doesn't make a difference if we can't have the trucks going out to tow. And that's my issue. Someone can come to me with 30 cars in Oakland and it still goes on the list. And because they know I don't work for the mayor anymore, I can't jump the cars.
What about a car in your driveway, parked across your driveway?
You call our office. If you're there, in your house at the time, we will send, during 8 to 5 business hours, we will send an enforcement tech out to cite the car.
Didn't happen.
Call our office at 238-3099. If you can't get through to somebody there, call me at my number,
Okay.
4464.
Are you sending that handout around, Keith?
Yeah, people can take this, but
Send it around.
it's not got my phone number on it, but my phone number will be up later on the thing. But I will personally make an effort to do this. We've actually gotten much better at our response time. It's now 10 to 15 minutes. People should be aware that when they call about a blocked driveway, that you have to be there to sign off on the ticket. If you have red tips on your driveway and they're on the red tips, you don't have to be there, which is the great thing about the red tips. And we can talk about the red tips program too.
How do we get them?
Okay. Do you want me to talk about the red tips?
Yeah.
Okay. In November, when I started working for the city, I was tasked with the curb color programs. These curb colors are yellow for loading zones, for businesses, commercial loading, white for personal, people loading zones, real quick. Pardon me. So there's green zones, which are short-term parking for businesses, and there are red tips for driveways. Now, the red tip program and all these programs had been suspended for 2 years. So people have been trying to get all of these colors painted for 2 years from the city and have been unable to. Why had the program been suspended? We did not have the staff. Our staff was too invested in just doing basic maintenance, which, as you all know, Oakland is way far behind on. Michael came to me and he said, Keith, I need to restart this program. So I want you to go through every single person who has asked for a red tip driveway, a yellow curb, a green curb, a white curb, for the last 2 years. Call them, contact them, and ask them if they still want this. So I did. And now I have a list of all the people who are saying, yes, please do this. It is expensive to get your driveway red tipped. It's $484. Okay? What if you're here in the audience and you're saying, I don't care, damn the expense. Please come out and red tip my driveway. I have no problem paying you the $484.
What if you have a shared driveway?
Well, that's something you'd want to work out with people. But here's the deal. Even if you came to me and said this, I still couldn't do it immediately because A, it's raining outside and we can't paint during the rain, and B, we have no way to take your money. I'm setting up an invoicing program now with the city so that you can actually pay for this and we can get this done. And Michael and I are looking to have this finished by the spring and summer so we can paint during that time before the rain starts again next year.
What's your number, Keith?
4464. It's the same number from,
By the way, I'm recording this, and we'll try and get it up on YouTube. RCPC has set up a YouTube channel.
You're going to get lots of requests.
that's good. I'm more concerned about how I come off on camera, but regardless,
You look fine.
please, keep this in mind, that we are going to work on doing this. The reason you have to be there when the parking enforcement technician comes is because legally you're allowed to block your own driveway. And so when you come out and say, that's not my car, please ticket it, that gives the parking technician the ability to ticket. Otherwise, if you weren't home, your neighbor could see that you were blocking your driveway and call it in on you for whatever reason they want.
If you've got the red tips, what's the penalty, and can you block your own driveway if you're in the red?
It's probably not a good idea to block it with a red tip driveway, because that is something you can be ticketed on. And the penalty is the same as parking in a red zone, I believe. I don't have the exact number on me, but I can get back to you.
Excuse me, could you explain what a red tip is?
Sure.
Does that go all across the mouth of the driveway?
It goes on either side of the driveway. So a red tip is the curb on the right side and the curb on the left.
For how many feet?
Well, that's the tricky part. It depends. And one of the reasons this costs so much is that we actually have to send out traffic technicians who can look at the driveway, look at the street, and make that decision about how long it should be or how small it should be. I've seen some that were very small, and I've seen some that were pretty big. But that's something the traffic technicians. I'm not a traffic technician, so I can't make that call.
I have neighbors that are red tipping their own driveway.
Yeah, that's not kosher. We don't allow that. And if you call that into Public Works, they will come out and gray over the red tips.
You mean transportation?
Public Works Call Center, 615-5566.
But the staff are with the transportation.
I believe that they are. I believe that they are, but the traffic maintenance will do that. Yeah, absolutely right. But it goes through the call center. That's where you put in the request.
When I called in about the car blocking my driveway, I was told that, I was asked, do I want ticketed or towed? And I said, towed. Gotta get out of here. And she said to me, okay, but it'll be a while before somebody can show up. And then somebody has to write up a ticket, and then a policeman has to come before it can be towed.
Right. The towing stuff, I don't want to speak to, because I'm not an expert on how to do the tows.
Okay.
I will suggest that if Michael gets here later, that we talk to him about this, or you and I can talk about it. I can get you better information at another time, but I can't get into the tow stuff. The city doesn't own a tow truck that it can do this with. We subcontract with other people, and there's complex issues of private tows, and I don't want to get into that. But I do want to say that if anyone finds somebody blocking their driveway, please, please, please call the 238-3099 number. During business hours, we will try to send somebody out as fast as we can. We are working on getting better and better at it.
How much was the red tipping?
$484. That's the current amount in the master fee schedule. Now, I'm going to also suggest that a lot of people are blanching at the cost. $484 is quite a bit of money. I've talked to some people who are happy to pay it. It doesn't seem to make any difference to them at all. And that's folks all over the city. Other people are like, no, that's too much. I personally think it's a lot. So what Michael is thinking about doing is setting up a program where we subcontract with someone who can go out and do a whole bunch at once for a reduced amount. This is purely hypothetical. It's in the future. He's talking about it. So I'm talking to folks who are asking, hey, if you think this is too much, what do you think is fair? It has been done that way in the past. They have done this, but again, I'm just saying that's one of the ideas down the line.
What's the advantage of having the red tip?
You don't have to be there if someone's blocking your driveway to wait for the technician to come out and sign it. They can just show up, cite the person.
That's the advantage.
The advantage of having red tips is so people don't park right up at the edge of your driveway.
Well,
because some driveways, that's the real reason. I have a friend that lives on Lawton, and she has a little hill up to her driveway. And if someone's parked right up to the edges, you cannot back up because you can't angle either direction.
No,
You're boxed in, and they're not crossing your driveway with the car. That's why people want them.
That's a trade-off.
Of what?
Well, you lose your ability to block your own driveway and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, how long do you block your own driveway for? To like drop off
Depends.
groceries or something?
You can block your own driveway because you're the only one that has to
But
be
not
there.
if it's red tip.
Yeah, if it's red tipped and they come by, they may,
Yeah,
they may
no,
Yeah.
block it
no,
and cite it.
Let me tell you.
I always